Well, hello there and welcome to Spokal's live webinar, Learn How I Write blog posts that get read by thousands. My name is Sarah Burke and I am the presenter today. I'm the content writer and marketer at Spokal, and I'm going to be hosting and presenting today, and I don't have anybody with me to help with the chat. So just to let you guys know that I'm not taking Q&A. But if you have any burning questions that you just simply need to ask, please send me an email and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Okay, so I'm going to get right into it because we have a limited amount of time and I have a lot of slides. Okay, so here's what we'll be talking about today. So this is kind of a four-part breakdown of what I do on a regular basis that can kind of work with any blog in any context. I just want to kind of give you an idea of the general breakdown of what goes on writing a blog post that gets read by thousands of people, but I also want to let you know that there are a lot of other things at work that are very specific to the context of me working at Spokal. And you will get to know what works with your business as you kind of keep creating content and you keep an ear to the ground, you keep listening to your audience, and you get a lot of feedback. You'll realize what works really well with your audience. But definitely these are the things that are going to work for anyone's audience, and this is going to work for any content creation. So that's kind of my logic for what I've been creating for you guys with this presentation. So first we're going to start with get in the know, and this is just really getting to understand your context. So who you're talking to, who's on your side, and who is your competition. And then we'll be talking about the writing process, and this is the nitty gritty. This is getting your hands dirty and actually creating the content itself. Then we'll be talking about social. And a lot of people think, oh yeah, social media when I say social. No, it's not. It's about getting seen. So that's why I just have social, and more social, because the more you're seen, the more you're heard, the better your business is going to do. And then we're going to talk about organization. And a lot of people don't include this in these kinds of webinars. And I think that's kind of because they take it for granted that people know how to get organized and how important it is, or they don't get organized themselves and they've just been kind of wading through a lot of paper and a lot of clutter in order to get things done. But you're a lot more efficient when you're organized. So that's why I've kind of included that in today's webinar. So get in the know, knowing your audience, knowing your allies, and knowing your competition. So the first group of people I want to talk about is your audience. Everyone's audience is really, really different, and don't take it for granted just because you're in the same industry as somebody that you guys have the same audience. That's just not how things work. You're going to always have a slightly different audience than somebody else. For example, people compare Spokal to HubSpot a lot, but we might do a lot of the similar things and we might kind of operate similarly to HubSpot, but we are designed specifically for small businesses. So we have a different audience and we need to understand that in order to be effective in creating content that's valuable for that audience. So when I'm talking about getting to know your audience, I'm not just talking about getting to know the demographics. Of course, that's important, but that's kind of beyond basic. Of course, get to know your demographics. Of course, get to know what age group is really interested in your product. But it's about actually getting to know them really, really well. And that process usually goes like listen, understand, and empathize. And what that means is that listen is I hear you, understand is I understand you, and then empathize is I feel what you're feeling. So listening can happen anywhere. That's on social media, that's on your comment section in your blogs, that's in your emails. Understanding is when you actually take the time to read it and figure out what the people are trying to say. And empathizing is when you're almost feeling the outrage or the person's discouragement or their excitement or their frustrations. That's empathy. And the empathy is the really important part of knowing your audience really well. It's almost like you are in this struggle with them and you really, really, really want to help them. And when you get to the point of being able to empathize with people, you get to a point where creating this content is of vital importance, and it just informs the way you write to a degree that no competition is ever going to be able to write. So the second group of people is your allies. These guys are often referred to as influencers. And if you don't know, influencers are people who are super influential. I don't think that influencers is wide enough a label for these guys. Allies for me are people who are just really, really on your side. They're almost like your mom and dad. They're kind of rooting for you, you know? They're at the sideline going, we believe in you. We really enjoy what you're doing, and we want to help. That's your allies. And they are just absolutely fantastic for your business. They're the people who are going to be spreading the word about what you're doing in a really, really positive way. And you may or may not know that word of mouth advertising is the best advertising that you can get. And if you have allies and if you're nurturing those relationships with allies, you're getting that advertisement for free. So it's really, really important to get amazing press, even if it's off a small group of people. They are also the people who leave incredible comments in your blogs. And, you know, some people feature comments on blogs, which is great publicity. Again, user-generated content is a huge thing. Word of mouth advertisement is a huge thing. So if you have people commenting and being really super positive with your content, that makes you look fantastic. They're also very vocal. And if you nurture these relationships with allies, you start to get almost a friendship blossoming. Of course, it's not quite, but it's almost that. And they are usually a little bit more open and more vocal about speaking with you about certain issues that they're dealing with, that you might actually be able to answer, and that the larger audience might not feel comfortable enough saying to you. So these people are just kind of going to come out and say what their problems are, because you're after nurturing that relationship. And finally, especially if you're a small business or a startup, it's great to have people rooting for you that you can ask favors from. So, and I don't mean like, you know, can you go and, I don't know, spread the word everywhere you see and do this job for me and this job for me. No, I don't mean that. I mean like great testimonials, doing a survey for you, you know, simple things that can kind of get the ball rolling on certain things like, you know, a survey. If you don't know if many people are going to be answering, you know, your allies will be answering, or testimonials. If you don't have any yet, your allies are going to be the people that you can ask and you can be certain of getting a great one from. So how to recognize them? So they're going to be part of your audience at first, obviously, but there are some key things that I've noticed happening where I've realized that these people are different than the other audience members. The first thing is they'll keep coming back and commenting on your post regularly, and it's usually a positive. It's usually, thank you so much, this is really helpful, or what have you. The second thing is they might try to connect with you in a really unconventional way. So there are certain ways to connect with a writer or a small business owner, or a startup, a content marketer, whatever you are. There are certain avenues that you kind of channel people through, and that might be your email or your Twitter, Google+, Facebook, whatever it is that you prefer to communicate through. And sometimes your ally might try to connect with you in a really unconventional way, and that's just their way of saying that I'm not just a normal viewer, I'm really interested in actually talking with you, and I really like what you're doing. So for example, like I had somebody direct message me on Pinterest before. I've had direct messages on my personal Twitter account, which I get quite a lot of, which I think is lovely. I love talking to people on Twitter. And then I've even gotten a few LinkedIn messages as well. And then you get the emails, which I think are a lot more personal. So any kind of like direct way of talking with you rather than like, I don't know, through just tweets or like really public forums. If it's a direct one-on-one thing, usually it's the person's trying to reach out and actually have a conversation with you. They will take your advice on board and they'll come back to you with results, which is absolutely amazing for your content. And these guys will kind of ask you questions about how you got on with a certain project or updates on a post. For example, I had a challenge. It was create 100 blog posts in 30 minutes. And a few people go off and do their challenges and come back to me and tell me how they got on, which was amazing. I was so excited to see that people were actually like taking 30 minutes out of their day to create a lot of content. And you know, they were coming back to me telling me the results, and it was great. And they were asking me how, after a month later, how had I used my ideas. So I created a graph and I went ahead and I updated that post because I was having these conversations with my allies who wanted to know how I was getting on. So that really inspired the content. The third group of people I want to talk about is the competition. So knowing your competition is obviously really, really important. And if you're on Spokal, you will have seen a CNC, a Convince and Convert tab. This is kind of what it has inspired this particular slide. Sorry. Because in the Convince and Convert, we have a negative and positive, and we can follow our competition and we can look at the negative and positive social media interactions that they're having. Obviously, you can do this too with just looking through your competition's pages, but this is just kind of what inspired this way of researching our competition for me. So when you're looking at the negative, look at what people are doing wrong. Maybe people are tweeting to your competition that they're too expensive. You offer something cheaper. Maybe people are posting complaints about getting too many emails throughout the week. You write some content about how not to get people unsubscribing from your email list. Or you promise that you won't over email people or whatever it is. You fill in that gap. You fill in any pitfalls that your competition is having, and you kind of get in there and you offer a better service. Positive, what are they doing right, and how can you do better? What content is being shared and liked, and how can you do it better? Always try to be better than your competition, and that's why you need to know them. You're always trying to be better. Okay, so the nitty-gritty, the writing process itself. So in this, I'm going to be talking about fearless brainstorming, finding your writing style, and acting as an editor. Fearlessly brainstorming is pretty difficult, and that's part of the pre-writing stage of this very simplified writing process. Okay, sorry. So stage one is pre-writing, research, keywords, and Spokal. So if you have Spokal, this is how you get your research on, I guess. So it's simply a research tab. You go to keywords. Hopefully you've set up a few campaigns of keywords that are relevant to your industry. So if you're a baker, you might have bakery in Vancouver, cupcakes, delicious cupcakes, chocolate eclairs, whatever it is. That will be your keyword campaign, and you can do some research on that and see which ones are driving the best traffic in comparison to the competition. So the idea is that if there is a lot of traffic but nobody's writing on the topic, then that will go green and you are ready to rock, because a green means that the content is just waiting to be written and people are searching it and they're not getting a lot of information on it. So you need to fill in that gap. You need to give them that information, and you will be one of the only sources with that information available. So that's why it's really, really important to do that. If it's red, it means that it's either being searched a lot or nobody's searching for it. Basically, nobody's interested and nobody's looking for it. So it's not going to get a lot of results in search engines. And then the yellow is okay. So as you can see here, for example, there's a lot of traffic to it, but there's a lot of competition to it as well. So it's fine. It's not going to get amazing results, but it's fine. Usually with yellows, you can get them to be green by making them more specific. Affordable SEO services in Vancouver maybe, or in BC or whatever. You can also do keyword research in Google AdWords if you're not on Spokal. So you can just track campaigns down here and see what the competition for them is and see how many people are searching them. And you can figure out what keywords can be kind of utilized for your own benefit, and what keywords people need, people are searching for. So these are the questions people are asking because they're searching for them. People are looking for example, content marketing. There's a medium competition for it, but look how many people are searching that, 20,000 in a month. You know, the chances are you're not going to get seen in search engine results pages if you just have content marketing as a keyword. So you need to get more specific. You need to get more niche. BuzzSumo is also a great way to do some research. So all you do is write your kind of keyword or your content idea here. You search it, and you'll see what has been 24 hours, a week, month, whatever. You will see what is most attention. So this is all social shares. This is ranked by how much social action it's getting. And what's great about this is if you put something in and you know there's a few posts coming up but they're not getting a lot of shares, you can go in there and you can kind of look at the top one. So 3 ways to get people to read your blog posts. There are not a lot of shares on this, so maybe I can create 10 ways to get people to read my blog post. Obviously this is in the last week, so if you go a little bit further back, you'll see that there's more competition for it. But just in general, that gives you an idea on how to use BuzzSumo. So now we go to fearlessly brainstorming. This is what a fearless brainstorm session looks like. Now, I did this back in Halloween, obviously, because I was talking about Halloween content. And it's just kind of, it's very, very messy. It's very haphazard. It's just all over the place. And that's fine, because when I do this, I don't usually think anyone's going to see it. Maybe I should have done it a bit neater because I was putting it on a webinar. But it gives you an idea of what I was doing and why I was doing it. And I need to update this because it's no longer Halloween. But it gives you an idea of the kind of scribbling mess that you do. Always remind yourself while you're doing these brainstorms, if you're feeling a little self-conscious, just remind yourself that you can simply throw it away and no one will ever see it. So fearlessly brainstorming always starts with reminding yourself that nobody will judge you for what you're doing. So the most important thing to fearlessly brainstorming is to set yourself a time limit. When you're first doing it, I would set yourself the higher time limit of 30 minutes. And this is actually just to push you to brainstorm for 30 minutes. You're probably, after about 10 or 15 minutes, you'll feel like you don't have anything else to write. Stick to it, set a timer or an alarm clock or whatever you want, and don't stop writing until that timer goes off. Trust me, once you feel like you've exhausted all mental capacities and you're going a little bit insane, that's when true genius is born, and that's when you want to be still writing. And then it's really important to have no distractions. So I like to actually use a pen and paper for this. I don't go on my laptop because I just feel like it's super easy to be distracted by. And I close my curtains and I just turn my phone off. And then there's no other way to say this. I just word vomit on the page. I just I just write. Anything that comes to my mind. A lot of it can be gibberish, especially if I'm tired. I'll look back on it and like, okay, that didn't make sense. But the point is that I stuck to it, and that in the last few minutes, I probably did come up with something that I wouldn't have if I hadn't pushed myself through that kind of period of going slightly crazy. So, like I said, the important thing is to write like no one's watching, and that's why it's really great to use pen and paper for me anyways, because I feel like on the internet, like there's always this like paranoia that you'll accidentally publish something, or that somebody will come across it, or you'll forget to delete it, or whatever it is. When it's written on a piece of paper, it's just so easy to get rid of. So write like no one's watching, because they're not. They're simply not watching you. So stage 2, writing. To write well is to think clearly. That's why it's so hard. I really like this quote, because unless you've sat down and you have started to write full time, you don't really appreciate how hard it is. And you forget that inside your own brain, it's just a jumble of mess of different thoughts flying everywhere, and it's hard to express yourself clearly and concisely. And that's why writing is so hard. It's almost hard to get what you want to say on a piece of paper. And this is one of the ways that I find helps people reduce that chaos that's going in their head. First, you put that chaos on a piece of paper with your fearless brainstorming. And then you create something with a little bit more structure. So as you can see here, this is the fearless brainstorming. This is the chaos. And then we go over here and we've created a list or subheadings of what we want to be writing about in our post. So as you can see, I have ghost, ghouls, and goblins, how to create Halloween content. And I've taken just bits and bobs out of my brainstorming session and written them into 8 different subheadings. Now these will change. This is just to give me an idea of what I should be discussing under each subheading. And what happens is your content becomes a lot more organized as you write. Now this might not always work depending on what content you're writing about. If it's an opinion piece, you might not have as many kind of clearly defined subheadings. But in general, this does work for most content. And it's just great. So if I'm talking about UGC or user-generated content, I'll just go and I will research user-generated content. I'll get some information, some data, some facts about user-generated content, and then I'll give some examples of user-generated content at Halloween. So people are inspired by the different content that's available specifically in that group that I'm talking about, under that subheading. And I'll do that for each and every one of them. And it just makes it much more easily digestible for my audience when I'm using subheadings, but it actually makes it really easy for me to write as well. So your first draft is always word vomit. So first draft with headings is organized word vomit. That kind of should be over there, sorry. So yeah, by doing this, you're not going to be as stressed out about making your content cohesive. It's going to already have some kind of order in it. And so you're ahead of the curve already. And now I just want to talk about titles, because they're so important when you're actually getting into the writing process. So David Ogilvy says that on average 5 times as many people read the headline as read the body copy. So when you have written your headline, you've actually spent 80 cents out of your dollar. So if that is where you're investing most of your money, it should be where you're investing most of your time, which I know isn't going to happen, but there are ways to kind of get your headlines to work better. And that is just about spending a little bit of time on them, especially at first. So title. If you're writing a title and you kind of know it's not great, and you kind of know that you could do better, it's time to write a lot of them. And this is going to take you a while. This will take you about an hour. I really like Upworthy's, I think it's a slideshow that they wrote, and it was about creating, or how they make things go viral. And in one of the slideshows, they're talking about how you should create 25 headlines, because otherwise people aren't going to click your links. And it's true, especially when you're first creating content and you really don't know what works and what doesn't work. It's a really great idea to just keep on writing your headlines. Keep writing 25 of them, especially if you have the time to do it. Please do it, because you should be investing a lot of time in it, because you are actually investing a lot of money in it. And that's just how it works. You're supposed to spend you're supposed to spend your time on the areas that are valuable, and creating headlines are extremely valuable. Okay, so your writing style. Style kind of comes with practice. I wanted to talk about this because I get asked a lot, how does one develop their writing style? So I wanted to include this because it is a question I get a lot. However, it's not something that I can give you a definitive answer on, unfortunately. I wish I could, but it's something that comes with practice. If you read a lot of blogs and newspapers and magazines, you can take note of what people are doing, especially writers that you really like. You can take note of what they're writing about, and how they're writing and their styles of writing. That can help a lot. If you read a lot of the times you're going to kind of have a writing style. As you start writing, you're going to realize that you already have a writing style that kind of reflects some of your favorite authors. So that's great when that happens. But again, it's with practice. Don't be afraid to be funny, and don't be afraid to be colloquial, which means just, talking conversationally, talking like you're talking with an old friend. But never sacrifice style for good spelling, grammar, or syntax. Like, I know that sometimes we purposely misspell things, like OMG. Well, that's not misspelling, but using incorrect grammar, or we'll spell things the way it's pronounced sometimes on purpose, like, oh my God, GAWD, or whatever you want to be writing. If it's for a comedic effect, it's fine. But what I mean by don't sacrifice good spelling, grammar, and syntax is that you should demonstrate that you have a really, really good grasp on that, and that what you're doing right now is just for fun. So when you kind of go off the trail and don't spell correctly, it's for fun. It's not that you don't know your stuff, it's that you're having a laugh, and that's fine. So stage 3 is revision. Revise, 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 and more revision. Revision is probably one of the most important things you'll do to create amazing content after your headline. So unfortunately, the body of text that you've written, that you spent the most time on, is only going to be probably the third most important thing. Let's say the third most important thing to creating content. First your headlines, then the revision, and then the actual body, if that makes any sense. It's because your body of text isn't going to be cohesive. It's not going to be easily read. It's not going to be digestible. It's not going to be relatable. It's not going to be engaging if you don't revise it a lot, if you don't make it easy to read. So your first draft is obviously your word vomit, and then your second draft is just rephrasing sentences. If you have a little bit of copy and pasting done, you want to put that in your own words. You clean up your spelling and grammar, do a little spell check there, and you'll have your subheadings already. Well, you should, but you might have even subheadings. So add those in. And then your third draft is you'll start to, if you have any data or any facts, always link to them. So if you're saying 2 out of 10 people, or only 2 out of 10 people read past your headline, where did you get that information? I don't know. You could have just made that up. But no, you didn't, because you have it linked. I know exactly where you got that from because you linked it for me. So that is amazing when people do that. It's basically backing up what you've said with a source. So that's really important. Extra information to support some points. And then numbered lists, bullet points, and again, make that easy for people to read, make it easy on their eyes, so it's not just a wall of text, so they can pick out the important pieces of information really easily. And then the fourth draft is the read through, and then you catch last errors. And the fourth draft, the final draft, make sure when you're reading it that if you come to any points, you kind of stop and say, that sounded a bit clumpy, or I could have phrased that better. Go ahead and rephrase that. There's something about that sentence that doesn't quite work. When on your fourth draft, you should be able to read through your content, or your fifth draft, or your last draft. You should be able to read through the content without kind of stopping and thinking, that didn't sound great. And the last stage is publication. So you copy and paste. I like to do all my writing in a Word doc, by the way, just because I don't want to accidentally publish something before it's ready. So I do everything in a Word doc, and at this point I copy and paste everything into the Spokal editor. If you're using WordPress, copy and paste everything into your WordPress editor. And then you add photos. You make everything look good. Don't forget to play around with the center, left, right alignment. And that just makes things a little bit more interesting for the reader's eye while they're reading through it. And of course, don't forget to attribute it correctly so you don't get into any legal trouble. And then preview your posts and just make sure that it does look the way you want it to look. And when you're publishing, you're probably going to schedule rather than publish it directly. But if you're not, and even if you are, just remember to take into account different time zones. So if a lot of your readership is in, say, the US, but you're writing from Australia, make sure that you are posting content when people in the US are awake. And don't forget, after you create content, to take a break. I'm the worst for not doing this, and I actually have alarms set on my phone to remind myself to take a break, because the quality of your content starts to really suffer if you don't allow yourself to kind of walk around, go outside for a little bit and get fresh air and wake up a little bit, because this is really mentally exhausting. I think people underestimate how mentally exhausting it can be. So give yourself a break afterwards. Even if you feel okay, just give yourself a break. Go get yourself a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, listen to a song, go for a quick walk, run an errand, whatever it is. Just get away from the computer for a little bit so you come back to it with fresh eyes. And don't forget to stay inspired. I love my quotes. That's how I stay inspired. That's how I stay writing really great content, even on days that I feel like I can't. Because other people can. And if other people can, I can too. And quotes really get me, really remind me that it's not impossible. Okay, now we're talking about social, and more social. So like I said, this isn't just about social media, but it is partly. And content distribution is hugely important. So after you've published that post and you preview, you take it into account time zones, and you've published it, you're going to share it on social media. If you're on Spokal, hopefully you'll have all your social media accounts connected. So you'll have your Twitter and your Facebook, LinkedIn connected, so that when they're published, the first post is shared automatically, and then it's distributed over a certain time, or a certain amount of times over a certain time period, depending on what settings that you have in there. But don't forget to also go into your calendar, and when you're sharing, to update the posts and make them a little bit more interesting. Don't just share the title and the link all the time. It's fine sometimes, but just not all the time. And in the sharing process, we also have curation, which I'll get to in a second, and engage. So people, when you share something, people will be engaging with it. So engage back with them and say, thanks for sharing, thanks for reading. People are going to be commenting. Don't forget to reply to those comments on your blog. And then measure, how well has it done? How well is it ranking? If it's doing really, really well. Now, measuring sometimes happens a few months afterwards, depending on the content. Sometimes things can be quite popular straight, like as soon as you've written them, especially if they're quite timely. But some things are evergreen, so they take a little while for you to realize how popular they are. But keep measuring, keep having a look at how your posts are doing, and then if they're doing really, really well, repurpose them. And that's just about, getting into SlideShare and creating a SlideShare doing an infographic. You know, there's so many ways to repurpose content. So don't forget to do that if something's very successful. If it's not, just let it be. Let people engage with it, let people read it, but it might not be something that needs to be repurposed. So the point of repurpose is really you have this written source that people love. A lot of people might be more visual learners, so by taking a written source and creating a visual format for it, you're actually giving more people, more of your audience, a chance to engage with it. So content curation, like I said, this is actually part of the sharing process in the social or in the content distribution. So when you'll get a lot of really great content when you're doing research for your blog posts, but you'll also find just random posts as you're getting really into your industry that you really enjoy and that actually taught you a lot. So find those posts. Feedly is great for that. Just follow the blogs that you like the best. The most, and then you curate them and you share them. So curation will look something like this. Now, I don't really think you have to do it in this specific format. It doesn't have to be comment, link, post title, and then source, you know, whatever you feel comfortable with. But just in general, this should be included in your content curation. So you should definitely have a link and the post title, and then with edit out, do not forget to put the source in there, because you're actually making connections with somebody in your industry or another blogger or another content marketer. So it's important that they know that you're sharing their content. And a comment is fine as well. Not necessary, but you can comment. Leave a comment on everything. So blogs, shares, posts, YouTube, articles, links, webinars, quizzes, surveys, anything and everything you get your hand on, anything and everything that you read, don't forget to comment on. Depending on the day, sometimes I'll write, you know, like huge comments, and then I'm like, oh my God, that's as long as a blog post, I'm sorry. And other days it'll just be like, wow, I really enjoyed this read, thank you so much. The point is that I am getting to know people in the industry, and that I am reaching out to them and kind of keeping rapport, and eventually that will come in handy, or they'll start reading your content as well, which is great. So the final part of organization: schedules, deadlines, organization tools. Again, this isn't something that I see in a lot of webinars, or people focusing on in a lot of webinars, and that's kind of why I wanted to include it. It's really important if you want to be effective and productive creating content. You need to be on a very tight schedule, and you need to kind of push yourself to do that. So this is what a Spokal blog schedule look like for Tuesdays and Thursdays. So as you can see, I have the Tuesdays and Thursdays written down here, and then I'll just kind of fill in the gap with that. And once a month, I do a whole bunch of keyword research. And I also look at what posts that have been ranking really well for Spokal. And if there's any way for me to kind of build upon any of those posts, I'll include it here. Some title ideas just to give myself a better idea what I'm writing on. Notes, so if I have specific points I want to make, I'll add them here, and research. So if there's any particular blogs I've been reading or books I've been reading, I'll know to reference them while I'm writing that particular piece of content. And deadlines. Keep yourself to a really, really tight deadline. I know this is going to sound strange, but you want to be creating, and you want to be constantly working towards your goal. So it's important not to dwell on content too much. While you're creating it, you should have a start and a finish line for when you want it done. You will kind of go over it, or you will start earlier sometimes and really get it done, especially if it's something that you know you need to research a lot of. That's fine. What I mean is just tell yourself that, for example, on Monday, I write, edit, and format my blog, and I schedule it for Tuesday. I do my best not to ever start that on Fridays. I tell myself I have one day to do it, and I get it done in that day. And that just means that you're freed up on other days to do things. So if you can see here, I have big content written, and that's just content that's outside of just blog posts. So that might be I'm creating a slide share, I'm writing a guest post, I'm writing a webinar, I'm creating a webinar, I'm creating some interesting graphics, I'm doing some outreach, whatever it is, that I have specific days where I catch up on all that. So today, for example, it's Tuesday. I do a bit of outreach, which means that I'm sharing the post. So I go around on different platforms and I share the post that has been published this morning. And then big content, and I'm actually writing a guest blog post today. So that's kind of how that works. And then tomorrow I will do nothing except write another post. And then Thursday I'll do the same thing that I was doing this on Tuesday, except minus the webinar. And then Friday I have solely dedicated to creating something outside of a blog post. So this is really, really important. Also getting read a lot is creating creating material that's not just blog posts. Looking at your audience and thinking, you guys don't just want to be reading all the time. You also want to be engaging in different ways. So do make sure that you have time to do that as well. Big content will be also the time where you repurpose any really successful content. So that's how you kind of create deadlines for yourself in order to be really productive. Obviously, you don't have to follow this, but whatever your deadline is. Learn to love Word and Excel. You're just going to be in them a lot. There are a lot of shortcuts, like Control-C, Control-B, Control-X, Control-Z, different things like that that make using these platforms really, really easy and really quick. So I would kind of get to know them very, very well and learn to love them and learn to figure out the shortcuts within them, and just so that you have those platforms kind of under your thumb and you don't have to think about it. Learn to love folders and subfolders. I'm sorry that's cut off. There's some weird formatting issue when I start sharing this on Webinar Jam, but that just says folders. So as you can see, I love my folders and my subfolders. So if you go, these are my general things. So I have blogs, funny things to share, because I also like to share kind of like amusing things, especially on Monday morning or something. I like to give people a little bit of a laugh on our social media accounts. Guest blogs, so that's either people are guest posting for us or I'm posting for them. Intro package, that's just some other content that we had created, paperwork, Spokal, schedule, so this is all my organization and the webinars. But if you go inside blogs, you'll see all my, or most of my blogs written up here. Now I'm going to go through these eventually and kind of organize them yet again into a different format so that it's easy. So I don't have as many here to look through, and I'm looking for my more recent ones, but that just gives you an idea. And then learn to love bookmarks. So you're going to constantly be using all these different sources. Like for images, you're going to have different Creative Commons websites, different public domain, free stock photos, DIY, high-res photos, vintage photos, etc. You're always going to be going back and forth to these things. So it's great just having them at a click of a button. It saves so much time. And then you have Spokal there, and I have everything set up, so it's really easy for me to go to. And then these are two things that I just can't live without that I thought I'd share with you guys, which is Evernote and the Moleskine. Moleskine is just a little planner, but I really, really like this particular brand. I think it's really, really amazing. If you don't have a planner, I would suggest getting one to keep you on task. And Evernote is fantastic when you're kind of wandering around the city or you're out on the weekends and you see something that inspires you. Maybe you're on a commute and you're thinking about what you want to be writing. Evernote syncs to your computer from your phone, like without you having to do anything. So it's just amazing because you always have content where you need it. You always have your notes where you need it. So that's why I really like those two things. So if there's 4 key takeaways I want you to leave this webinar with, it's get to know the people who will likely be reading and sharing your content. Then write fearlessly because you'll be revising over and over again. It shouldn't be against, sorry. Only what you're ready to put out will go out. Don't just sell your own content, sell advice and help. Show people that it's not all about you by curating and commenting on other content. and get organized. You'll be a lot more productive and a lot less stressed. So thank you for joining me for this Spokal Live webinar. And I hope to see you guys at a few of the other webinars we'll be creating soon. Have a great day. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me a quick email. Okay, bye.